The past week has been a very busy one in the country's political front. From President Zuma's cabinet reshuffle that took place last week to press conferences every single day by different major political formations in the country. And then, of course, rating agency Standard & Poor's downgrade of South Africa to junk status, then followed by our banks being downgraded to junk status. This week alone, at least 3 MPs who served as ministers before the reshuffle have resigned, and today has been earmarked as a day of mass action by political groups and civil societies. Well, joining us to talk a little bit more about what's been happening is Prince Mashele. He's the Executive Director for the Center for Politics and Research. Prince, welcome. Good to have you on the program.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. This week it has been busy. It has been one of those very emotional weeks for everybody. What are you reading into it? What do you make of this week?
Look, it's a week of madness, and the center of this madness is government. Governments all over the world are expected to inspire confidence and project a sense of stability in a country. But this instability that we have originates from government. This has got to do with the firing of the Finance Minister, President Zuma. And there's a general belief in society that President Zuma was not fired by the president, but by the Guptas. In other words, there is a sense that private interests have taken over the state, which is why South Africans are up in arms, calling for the president to resign. There are big marches planned today as a result of that. So the center of the story is that we have a government that has lost contact with the people of South Africa, which is why South Africans are rising.
Yeah. We've also this week seen political parties coming together. I mean, we saw at one stage 5 political party heads sitting behind one table calling for the mobilization of South Africans to come together and to stand up against this. Is this the start of something bigger here in South Africa? I mean, are we going to be seeing some of these parties perhaps joining together, or are we on the wrong track here?
Look, South African political parties in general don't like each other. They differ stridently. The fact that we are now seeing them coming together to take the same position on similar issues tells you that we are actually in a state of national emergency. But we must not read this as a reunification of political parties. I think this is an issue-based alliance. All of them understand and appreciate the depth of our crisis. After they have solved this crisis, I think they'll go back to their own positions.
Yeah, all right. So we're not necessarily seeing them making up and being friends, but they're just, for once, agreeing on one issue.
Certainly not. These are not permanent friends.
Yeah.
These are temporary alliances based on the issue that is at hand.
What happened this week? I mean, last week we had our Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, coming out and almost saying that what the president did was wrong in the cabinet reshuffle. Mantashe coming out and saying, I was not consulted, he gave us a list, and that was the end of that. It was wrong. And many others. And then suddenly it all turned around. The National Working Committee met, statement given the next day, and almost a unanimous apology for what they had said the week before. What went wrong there?
Look, Jacob Zuma is very smart. He has captured the structures of the ANC. When Cyril Ramaphosa spoke the way he did and Mantashe, what he did, he activated his supporters. He said, let's call an NWC that is extended, which is an NWC that includes chairpersons and secretaries in the provinces. He knew that those people support him. So what they did, they came to Lutula House and lambasted Ramaphosa, lambasted Mantashe, and told them to shut up and told them to apologize. And they were told what would happen to them if they didn't do that. And they understood, which is why they apologized. But there is also an element of lack of leadership and courage on the part of Cyril Ramaphosa. If he was a true leader, he should have stuck to his guns. He should have provided leadership to many people in the ANC and in South Africa who actually support his stance. His U-turn and Mantashe's U-turn demonstrates that actually there is no alternative center of leadership in the ANC.
Which is worrying, because we're heading into 2019. We've got the elective conference that's happening at the end of this year. And, you're wanting to see new leaders step forward, and yet it doesn't seem to be happening.
Look, here is the future of South Africa in the ANC. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is going to be president of the ANC after December this year. And that person, by the way, is a deployee of the ex-husband, Jacob Zuma. Cyril Ramaphosa has already lost it. Live and I live, it will happen. Now, what will happen is that South Africans will have to decide whether they want a Zuma regime to continue. And that decision will have to be made in 2019. You have to live with Zuma until 2019, unfortunately.
How much damage can be done to this country? I mean, we're already seeing the downgrades of, to junk status in our economy. Our banks have now been downgraded to junk status. And this is a big worry. And the emotions running through South Africans are very high right now. People are exceptionally worried. Are they right to be worried? Should we as South Africans be worried at this point?
We should be very worried. This is what the downgrades mean for an ordinary South African. Food prices will go up. Your interest rates will go up. In other words, if you have a bond, you will struggle to repay your bond. So life is going to be very difficult. People will lose jobs. So there is a pain that we'll have to take before we begin to change. So South Africans have to be worried. Let me tell you, South Africa is stable now because of the strength of our private sector. If we didn't have the kind of private sector that we have, South Africa by now would have been a failed state given what Zuma has been doing to the state. State institutions have been collapsed and weakened. The only pillar that stands, that holds South African society together, is the private sector. But let me tell you, South Africans have to rise and stand up and defend their country. If they don't, they are the ones who are going to suffer. Look at Zimbabwe, right? When Mugabe said he was taking land from whites, inverted commas, to give to black people, he impoverished his own black people. Every corner in South Africa, almost all over the world, has a Zimbabwean begging. It was not the case until Mugabe decided to go mad. Zuma is taking South Africa down the same route. South Africans have a choice. Do they want to look like Zimbabwe, or do they want a better country? The choice is theirs.
Is our industry perhaps a little bit stronger than that? Do you think that we could get through what Zimbabwe didn't get through, or is the writing on the cards?
Look, our economy is much stronger than that of Zimbabwe, and I think that it has the ability to withstand political pressure. We can actually hold out until Zuma is out of government, but the damage will be huge. In other words, once Zuma is out of government, you will almost need to build from scratch. Many people would have suffered by then.
I just want to get back to him. We're going to take a break now. When you talk about Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma coming in as president, and I do look to what you say as almost being prophetic in a way, because when we take a break, I'm going to come back and talk about an article you wrote at the end of last year. In terms of having Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as the party president, perhaps the next president of South Africa, if the votes go in that favor, do you think she'll be a good president, or is that just the continuation of the Zuma regime, as you said?
Terrible presidency under Dlamini Zuma, I have no doubt about it. I'm not aware of any unique idea she has ever contributed anywhere in the world that revolutionized anything. Number one. Number two, she's an old ANC furniture. A lot is created around her, but actually, if you analyze her as an individual, you can't find anything tangible. I think it will be a continuation of the Zuma regime.
All right, Prince, I'm going to ask you to sit tight. We'll take a break, then we'll talk about an article that Prince Mashele wrote at the end of last year about South Africa just turning into a typical African state and what that means. Do stay tuned.